Welcome to We Are the People. Ladies and gentlemen, today is one of the important days that I'm doing an interview with a gentleman who would like to take the responsibility of all of the citizens of Queens County as the guardian of the judicial system. One of the individuals for the last over, I think, a decade, more than a decade, he's holding that position. There is a tons of human rights violation took place under his watch. It's not my opinion. That's a public view. There's a lots of other public outcry that how come an individual can run that position, run that office, who is not in a mental and physical position to recognize his own people, but he is occupying the office. And some of the people's life are being destroyed under his watch. There is no accountability. So 10 years, 20 years, almost 30 years, people are under a rule. That rule is using for the benefit of the administrative people at his office and some cherry-picked people, and others are unfortunate. However, these years, a race we are going to have for the position of Queens District Attorney is one of the most important race that Queens County citizens are facing, which is going to be held in, probably primary is going to be held in June, and then final election will comes up in November. Ladies and gentlemen, when some people are running for Queens DA, there is some specific qualification, and experience required. It's not that anybody comes up and says, hey, I got the law degree and I passed the bar exam and then I'm going to run for Queens DA. That's not the case. This race and this position should be occupied by an individual with proper education, proper experience, moral standing, with a principle, values, and all the life should be safe under his regime, the way they're going to run. With a proper experience as a defense attorney, a guy with a proper experience to manage the office, with the proper experience to feel the pain of the real people. Today, I become lucky enough to meet one of the gentlemen who happens to be working for the New York State, who has a track record, not only passed the law school, not that only he passed the bar exam, he has the right experience. I can feel his heart. He's one of us. He cares about people. Ideal husband, ideal father, ideal brother, whatever way we can describe. Ladies and gentlemen, today at this time, usually I don't do talk show. Usually my time frame is in the evening time, 7:30, 8 o'clock. Due to his tight schedule, I just stole him from somewhere and bring him to the studio. That gentleman is no other than Attorney Jose Nieves. Ladies and gentlemen, let's meet Attorney Jose Nieves, who is running for Queens District Attorney. Mr. Nieves, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Jacob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sir, my apology that I stole you from other meeting. You are so busy at this time running your successful campaign.
Yes.
Congratulations that you are in this race.
Thank you very much. It is a very busy race. We're gaining momentum. We're gaining real support from the community. And we're out there in every community, whether it be Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Corona, or which I just came from Far Rockaway, so
wonderful,
from the other end of Queens.
Right.
And I think this is important because I'm going to every media outlet to send the message of who I am and how important the District Attorney's Office is to Queens communities and Queens residents. How important the Chief Law Enforcement Officer position is, and why we need an experienced prosecutor in that job.
Mr. Nieves, my first question is a simple question. why people would think that you are the most qualified guy who has the capacity and right experience to become Queens District Attorney?
Well, Jacob, I'll tell you, I have 18 years experience as a prosecutor. I've prosecuted for 11 years at the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. I prosecuted correction officers with the Department of Corrections, correction officers who abused and abused their authority and exercised excessive force against those incarcerated at Rikers Island. I investigated and prosecuted police officers who caused the death of unarmed civilians throughout the state of New York. And I was also a military prosecutor. I served 10 years in the United States Army as a military prosecutor, and I was prosecuting officers for sexual assault and misconduct. I have a very long, varied experience as a prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor for the local courts, for the state courts, and for the federal courts. And I could tell you that my experience tells me what works and what we need to do in Queens to make sure our criminal justice system is both fair, just, and equal for everyone in Queens.
Let me understand what you say. You work for Brooklyn District Attorney's Office.
That's correct.
And you prosecuted correction officials, those who misuse their power.
Yes.
Over unarmed detainees.
Yes.
Okay. You also prosecuted police officer.
Correct.
Those who excessively use force over civilian.
Who are unarmed.
Unarmed.
Unarmed, correct.
You also were a military prosecutor who broke discipline. You also prosecuted them.
That's right. Because in my philosophy of prosecution, no one is above the law, no one is below the law. We're all subject to the same law. We should all be treated equally under the law, and everyone should be held accountable for their actions.
Right before you start your campaign, what was your position?
I was the Deputy Chief of the Special Investigations and Prosecutions Unit for the New York State Attorney General's Office. In that position, I supervised investigations and prosecutions of police officers who caused the to the death of unarmed civilians. And I was the first, I prosecuted the first homicide under the law that created that unit, the executive order from the Governor Cuomo, that created that unit. I prosecuted the first homicide where an individual on July 4th, 2016 had been shot and killed by a police officer on his way home, and the man was unarmed and he was shot and killed in front of his family.
One thing, you are already running and with all of the people, those who are running for Queens DA's office. Let me ask you one question. Probably you have the answer or you may not have that answer, because since I met you, you are nothing but modest, respectful to others.
Yes.
Do you have any idea or have any comments?
You know, that was one of the primary reasons I ran for office. I never ran for office before. I'm not a politician, I'm a prosecutor.
Right.
And I saw that these individuals, these politicians, were getting into the race, announcing themselves as candidates for the district attorney's office. And I was surprised because they had no experience whatsoever investigating crime, prosecuting crime, doing any type of law enforcement work whatsoever. Now, I have skin in the game. I have a 13-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter who take the bus to school every day. So I have a vested interest in making sure that Queens is safe. And I could not see these people, these candidates who were out there who had no experience, being a head of an agency whose sole purpose, whose one of the major purposes, is to protect families and communities in Queens. It was my community, my family now going to be, you know, under their supervision as the chief law enforcement officer, and I could not allow that to happen. I put myself in the race at great sacrifice to myself, at great sacrifice to my family, because I believe that the DA's office is a professional agency and it must be headed by a professional with the experience to lead. The experience to lead the 300 attorneys that are there, the 300 seasoned prosecutors that are there, the experience to investigate hard cases like police misconduct, like professional misconduct by judges and prosecutors. cases that involve homicides. As a 18-year veteran prosecutor, I know that we are dealing with people's lives, whether it be the victims' lives who lost a loved one, or who were victims themselves, abused by somebody, or we're dealing with the persons who get involved in the criminal justice system because they were arrested, they were accused of a crime. Whichever way you look at it, we're dealing with lives. And if you're dealing with people's lives, you should have at least the experience and the background to be able to do the job, because people want to feel safe. People want to trust and have confidence in the criminal justice system, and for that they need somebody they know they can trust on day one. Not somebody who's going to figure it out a year from now, 2 years from now. Not somebody who's going to hire other people who's going to tell them how to do their job. Somebody who starts on day one with the respect of the entire office. See, and that's what I bring, Jacob. I bring on the day one, I bring the respect of the entire office, both in court. The judges know me. In the DA's office, they know I'm a career prosecutor. They know I've done their job for 18 years. So when they come to me and say, this is the problem we have, I know what they're talking about. And I can tell them, this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to have a great team of attorneys that are going to come from the U.S. Attorney's Office, the State Attorney General's Office, the Brooklyn DA's office, and other offices. They're going to come here because, you know why? Because Queens gives an opportunity to do justice and to create a new system of justice where everyone is treated equally, everyone is treated fairly, and we're doing the right thing.
I have a question that probably sometimes some people are not going to like it. Are you the resident of Queens County?
Absolutely. I've raised my 2 kids in Queens Village.
And how long you're living there?
I've been living there more than 15 years.
Okay. There is lots of public has a tons of question and criticism in regards to the incumbent District Attorney Richard Brown.
Absolutely.
There is lots of allegation that Richard Brown is not the resident of Queens County, and he is not living in Queens County for the last almost 15 to 20 years. Did you ever hear this complaint?
I heard the allegation, and it saddens me, because I believe that every representative of Queens County, every public official of Queens County should live in the county that they represent. Also, lots of people are questioning sometimes. I interviewed them. This is Richard Brown, incumbent district attorney. He's a resident of Westchester County. Did you hear this type of allegation? Yeah, these allegations are out there. I don't know if they're true or not. However, if they are true, it's a huge disservice to the Queens residents, because the Queens residents need somebody that cares about their issues, and that has to be somebody that has their family in Queens, that's raising their children in Queens, that works every day in Queens and sees it, sees the community, smells the community, knows what's going on in the community. Unfortunately, during this campaign, I've been out in all sorts of communities, all sorts of neighborhoods. And it's the saddest thing in the world when I say, your district attorney is leaving and you need to pick a good district attorney to replace him. And they look at me and they say, who's our district attorney? They don't even know who he is. When I say Richard Brown is your district attorney, they look at me and they say, I don't know who you speak of. So
when you are meeting the residents of Queens County, they don't even know who is Richard Brown.
They don't even know who their district attorney is, and more importantly, they haven't seen their presence of the district attorney. And that's one of the things I'm going to fix on day one, to make sure that through my community partnerships division, that the district attorney has a presence in every community. I'm going to personally go out to every community and do town hall meetings, at least 6 during the year. I'm going to have my chief executives going out to precinct council meetings and community board meetings to represent my office. I'm going to send my assistant district attorneys into schools, intermediate and high schools, to talk to our kids and tell them this is what the criminal justice is. These are how you make good choices in life, and these are how you avoid bad choices. This is what choices and consequences are about in everyone's life.
I cannot let it go, because before I came to the interview, there is at least 20 questions comes up from my viewers, and they asked me that some of the people in Queens County believe that Richard Brown and some of the henchmen, those who are holding a position as executive assistant to the DA or some other biggest position, these people are running a criminal enterprise at Queens County District Attorney's Office. Do you have any opinion?
I think those are serious allegations. I don't know where they come from, but they're very concerning to me because, you know, as a district attorney, you're a minister of justice.
Right.
And all your chief people are also, and everyone that's assistant district attorney and represents the district attorney's office are ministers of justice. And when these allegations are tossed against ministers of justice, it brings the entire system down. And the trust and confidence of the public falls into the criminal justice system. And that affects public safety. It affects public safety because if people don't trust and have confidence in the criminal justice system, victims don't come forward and they don't report crime. Witnesses don't cooperate with law enforcement. We cannot do our job without the trust and confidence of the people. And if these allegations are being thrown and unresponded to, it's a serious matter. It's a very serious matter. Now, I have to tell you right now that from my perspective as district attorney, you know, it's going to be a complete transition of the office. You know, I feel we have to head in a different
complete
direction.
Transition means you promise on this television program, if you become Queen's DA,
Absolutely.
you're going to relieve every single person working under Richard Brown?
I'm going to bring in my team, my own people, my team as executives, and we're going to reform the criminal justice system in Queens. We're going to make it so that we end cash bail. We have a conviction review unit. We're gonna have a.
Let me ask you a question. Conviction review unit. It's a very good subject that you brought. Right now, Manhattan has that unit.
So does Brooklyn.
So does Brooklyn. So does Eastern Island and Bronx.
Even the Staten Island.
Eastern Island. Can you tell me what is your feelings, being a prosecutor, that why Queens DA Richard Brown did not allow that unit in Queens County?
I think it's the thinking of the past. There was a certain way of thinking in the past, and that certain way of thinking was we do things the way we do things, and no one has the authority or you know, to authority to question us.
So
you know?
Is it that when public is viewing that Richard Brown and his henchmen and goons are running a criminal enterprise at Queens County's office, does that justify a little bit that they don't want anyone watch their activities?
Well, what happens is when they engage in activity, no, some of the things that we have seen in the Queens DA's office are violating of people's rights. We have seen a policy where individuals who are arrested and brought to court have to waive their rights before they ever see a piece of evidence, before they ever see the charges against them. They're forced to waive their rights to 18080 to be released from incarceration, and they're told if you do not waive your rights, you will not be given an opportunity to negotiate for any type of settlement or plea negotiation. You will be, the only offer that you will have is top time on top charge on the indictment, and that type of coercion isn't justice. That is a legal bully in my respect. So
are you aware that it is Queens District Attorney's Office literally put the defendant under a serious threat and coercion? They forced them to plead guilty?
No, I'm not aware of anything like that. However, I am aware that they do force people to waive their rights, and there are consequences to not waiving their rights. And there's serious consequences where the person who is in charge for the crime feels that they have no other options. They have to waive their rights if they're going to be treated fairly. And that's not how the system should work. You should be treated fairly regardless of what rights you have. You have your rights because that's what the law allows. We shouldn't be forcing you or coercing you to give them up. The second thing that the Queens District Attorney is known for is to hold evidence until right before trial and then dump it on the in front of the defense counsel and the person accused of an offense, and have them scramble and try to prepare a defense. That is not justice. That is injustice. And I think when people hear about that, and when convictions get turned over and reversed because evidence was not turned over, that affects the confidence and trust of the people. People see how many time and time again individuals who are wrongfully convicted, wrongfully charged, and then spend 10, 20, 30 years of their life in jail, released only to find that their family are gone, that their community has changed. You know, people are tired of that. People want the system to work, and they're tired of these mistakes. And these are not just, oh, innocent mistakes. These are policies that prevent justice, like withholding evidence, like playing with the ready rule and saying, oh, we're ready today, but we're not going to be ready tomorrow. Let's put this over for another 2 months. While the individual sits in jail waiting for his day in court, the DA's office uses the law to try to keep them there longer than he
Mr. Nieves, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one thing. There is also a public allegation that Queens District Attorney's Office create false evidence to get conviction. And they literally make up that false evidence so that the defendant do not have fair justice.
You know, the other thing, other than the conviction review unit, which is I think very important, I'm going to have it, it's not just going to be a conviction review unit, but it's going to be an independent advisory council made up of clergy, community leaders, criminal justice reform agencies, and those who have been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. Make up this group, this advisory group that's going to advise me and my prosecutors how to prevent wrongful convictions.
I have a question.
But not only that, I also want to say that I'm going to create a professional responsibility and ethics unit, and this unit is going to specifically look at our own, at a assistant district attorney, at prosecutors.
Can you promise me another thing? At the federal level,
yes,
they appoint independent counsel.
Yes.
If any circumstances come in Queens District Attorney's Office that you have to prosecute someone inside of your office or someone with a public official with a higher profile, can you promise us that if necessary you're going to appoint an independent counsel?
Absolutely. The law allows in the state level for the district attorney to apply for the court to get a special counsel, a special prosecutor, and prosecute, investigate and prosecute their own. An assistant district attorney, an investigator, someone who works at the district attorney's office. Because we cannot be held to, we should not be allowed to prosecute our own in that way, because there's a conflict. And the conflict is we know that person. We've dealt with that person on a day-to-day basis. We have a personal relationship. And we should not be put in a situation where now we have to prosecute that individual for violation of law. I will guarantee you that in every situation like that, if one of my own is there's an allegation of misconduct, there's an allegation of criminal wrongdoing, I will seek a special prosecutor to investigate and prosecute that individual to the fullest extent of the law. And however, what I also want to do is create the special professional responsibility and ethics unit, because there are things that prosecutors may do that go less than a crime, that just are just below a crime, but are serious because you violated somebody's rights. And I think violating somebody's rights, even if it does not equate to a crime, should be dealt with. And that unit is going to deal with that specific problem.
You are an attorney, also a prosecutor. I have a question for you. There's a lot of people in Queens County believe that for the last 6 to 7 years, Richard Brown is not running Queens District Attorney's Office. He is not physically and mentally fit. Would you like to respond that is it fair to the citizen of Queens County that a guy who is not mentally capacity, do not have mental capacity and physical, is there any law that someone can challenge that I'd like to see the mental and physical condition of Richard Brown? How he's running the office?
You can. The governor has an opportunity to challenge the mental capacity of the sitting district attorney and their professional fitness to serve.
But that's governors. But I'm talking about citizen.
The mechanism for citizens is to vote them out of office, is the election box. And when an individual has no longer been connecting with the community, serving the community's interests, then the voters have to stand up, take their vote to the voting box and vote that person out of office. Then we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here. This seat is a very important seat to our families, to our communities, because it governs not only public safety, but programs for our kids, programs for those who are mentally ill, programs for those who are addicted to opioids and other drugs. Individuals who need these services to try to keep them out of the criminal justice system are depending on the voters of Queens County to pick the right person, to make the right choice so that we have a fair system, so that they can get the help that they need, so that our families are safe, so that our communities and our law enforcement know that they can do a job and do it well, protecting our communities.
I have another things I have to tell you. Under his tenure, under his watch, there is at least 7 to 8 minority individual got killed And none of them got justice under Richard Brown's law, the way they prosecuted. He put something in between, and his goons are putting something in between, never have any justice. Like, who is the victim? An African American. Who is the victim? A Latinos. He's the victim. Who is the victim? A guy from South Asia. Who is the victim? Asian guy. But guess what? There is no justice. Nothing came out of Queens DA. All the police officers got acquitted.
Yes, yes.
Like, do I have to mention any name, or you are aware of it?
I'm very aware of it, and it began as far back as Sean Bell and
Yep.
the shooting of Sean Bell, and 50 shots into a car that ended the life of a young man on the eve of his, of getting married. And you hear his mother speak in public, and she will say it outright. The DA's office did a lax job.
Yep.
They did a very minimal job
Yep.
in that prosecution.
Yes.
I think that hurts, because that means that people are believing that it's a different system for police officers. It's two-tiered system.
Yep.
There's a system for everybody else,
Yep.
and then there's a special system for those who are known to the DA's office, like police officers. And that cannot be the case. We are all equal under the law. And I have respect and honor for police officers. There are 36,000 police officers in the city. They have a hard job. They do it, and they do it well. But there are few of those police officers who will abuse their authority, who will cause the death of civilians, and we have to hold those individuals accountable in order to protect the reputation of the department. Because what will happen if we don't is that public will assume that those individuals who are doing bad things, who are causing the death of civilians, they represent the standard for the entire department, and they do not. They do not represent what the department is about. The department is about protecting individuals, not causing people's deaths. And when I prosecuted and investigated police officers, I made sure, and I will do this as district attorney, that every investigation into a police officer is known to the public. Every investigation where a police officer engages in excessive force or otherwise is known to the public. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to investigate the case outside of the grand jury. Outside of the grand jury, there's going to be a full investigation. Then I'm going to designate a separate team to go into the grand jury and present the charges. Whatever happens in the grand jury, whether they vote on charges and they indict the officer or not, I have this information that I'm going to share with the families and the public as to what happened.
Exactly.
Because the worst thing in the world for a mother or a father or somebody is to sit there and say, my son, my daughter was killed, and I have no answers. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. That's the worst feeling in the world for a parent. And as a parent, I can't imagine how insufficient, inadequate that is when you know your loved one was taken from you and no one can give you answers, and they hide behind the secrecy of the grand jury. Oh, it's the law. The law prevents me from sharing information. Nonsense. You do the investigation outside of the grand jury. You share that information. You give that family the answers they deserve. And then you present the case, whatever case that you presented to the grand jury on a separate team, you do that. And then if you get charges, that's fine. If you don't get charges, that's the way the system works. But at the very least, the families have answers. And one of my proudest endorsements, one of my proudest moments is when the family of the individual that I told you about, who was shot and killed, his brother and sister came and called me, and they said, Jose, you prosecuted the murder of my murder of my brother. You did justice. No matter what the outcome was, you did justice, and we feel that we want to endorse you. So now I'm endorsed by the brother and sister of the slain individual, Delron Small, who was killed by a police officer. You know what that means to me? That means I did my job.
Yeah.
That means I did my job. When I prosecuted that case, I was with the family. And that's what is so important. You want somebody in the DA's office as the DA who has held the hands of family members and looked in their eyes and told them that you're going to seek justice. You want that experience, because without that experience, you just don't have any understanding of what the victims are feeling.
Absolutely.
If you've never done that, if you never sat across from a mother who's crying because they lost their son and said, I'm going to seek justice on your behalf, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure justice is had, then you don't know what the job entails. And you shouldn't be the district attorney.
Lots of people, those who are watching this interview, they may say, Richard Brown is not running for Queens DA's office. why you guys are talking about DA's office. I have something to tell them or make you understand why we are talking. You already have a job.
Well,
you had a job.
I resigned from my
position. Resigned from
to
position or
run
run.
for office.
Why at this time you are running for this office? You knew that something is going wrong, something is not right in Queen's DA's office. That's why you are running. Right. And you are looking at yourself and thinking that I have all the right tools and experience and qualification to run for this office. That is the reason you are running.
And to change it.
Change it. Now, that is the reason you are running. Now, this is a very bitter question. When a public official do not live in Queens County but running a Queens DA's office, is it a criminal act or is it a violation or it's a mockery?
I think it's a violation of the trust of the Queens residents. I think it's definitely a violation of the trust. And as elected officials, you know, we base our reputation on the trust and confidence of our constituents.
Okay.
If we're not going to have their trust and we're going to violate that trust, then we shouldn't serve in office.
Okay. There's lots of people are telling me that Richard Brown is not living in Queens County for the last 10 to 15 years as he is the resident of Westchester County. Why people are giving him a leeway or looking other way? Why they do that?
You know, it has to do with politics. Unfortunately, the way the political machine works in Queens, certain things are decided, and they're decided in the back rooms of offices. They're decided by power players. Just like the endorsement of the borough president for district attorney, that was decided in a back room. You know, political clubs were not involved. District leaders were not involved.
What you are saying? Richard Brown endorsed Melinda Kurtz?
The Democratic Party.
Democratic Party. That's done by Joe Crowley, who himself was not living in New York, who was living in Maryland or Virginia.
And he admitted it.
He admitted it. So what does that mean? A congressman who was not the resident of Queens County but holding a congressional seat, a guy who is the resident of Westchester County who is holding Queens DA's office over a decade. So both of the people, is it very fair to say that both of them committed a crime?
Well, I wouldn't say a crime. What I would say was a violation of their ethics. And it was definitely a violation of the trust of the Queens residents. If
there is any violation of ethics, do you think they belongs to the public office?
Well, yeah, I think it does have an effect on the public office, because I think the governor and every other administration that oversees the DA's office should be looking at that and saying, wait a minute,
okay,
if you're not going to follow the rules, then you cannot serve as the chief law enforcement officer, because you have to follow the rules.
Audience, I'm sure you are thinking why Jacob Milton is interviewing a candidate who is running for DA, and we are criticizing a sitting Queens District Attorney's office who is not running for re-election. Why we are criticizing?
I think that the voters should know that if Melinda Katz gets elected as district attorney of Queens County, she is going to not change the thing.
Anything.
She's not going to change the office. I don't believe she's going to, and this is why. It's not because she has some type of nefarious reason or she's hiding something. She doesn't have the experience to know what changes have to be made and to execute those changes. In order to change a system, you have to know how the system works. You have to know where are the problems in the system. You have to know how to change them, and you have to know how to do that while still protecting families, while still protecting communities, while still being the chief law enforcement officer. That's way too much for any person to come into a job that they have no prior experience to and claim they're going to change a criminal justice system while leading, you know, this office of over 300 attorneys and another 300 support staff. It's just not realistic. It's not realistic because she doesn't have the background, she doesn't have the experience to be able to get it done. See, that's the difference between me and the other candidates in this race, is that I have the life experience to motivate me to change the criminal justice system. Why you say that? Because I'm a person of color. I grew up in a tough neighborhood. I've been stopped and frisked. I've been subjected to discrimination in the criminal justice system. My family has been touched by mass incarceration. These are the reasons why I have a life experience to motivate me to change the criminal justice system. But more importantly, and just as importantly, is that I have the professional experience to know how to change the criminal justice system. The professional experience and the nuanced understanding of the district attorney's office to be able to change that system and make it serve the people of Queens County.
Okay, is it fair to say electing Melinda Kurtz would be giving another 4 years to Richard Brown?
I think that I believe that many of the executives and the policies that Richard Brown has implemented and has carried out for over 20 years will remain the same.
Okay, so you and me, we agreed in one thing. Voting for Melinda Kurtz or electing Melinda Kurtz would be giving another 4 years to Richard Brown.
You would not be changing the district attorney's office.
So it would be the same thing.
It would be the same thing.
Same running a criminal enterprise.
I believe she's unable to change it, and I believe that her experience prevents her from doing the change that everybody wants to see happen. That's why so many advocate groups are so they're so vocal about we need change. The system is broken,
and that's not going to happen by Melinda Kurtz.
And then they don't believe she's going to do it, and they don't believe a lot of the other candidates are going to do it, but I'm going to do it because of my experience.
So you are saying perhaps Melinda Kurtz is a good person, but she do not have the right experience, quality, and qualification to run that district attorney's office.
You know, Borough President Katz was a wonderful borough president, and she served the county as a borough president. She served the county as an elected official in Albany, and there's nothing to disparage her service. However, again, if you're going to lead a office of prosecutors, you yourself should have been a prosecutor. And it's not something that we're asking for that we shouldn't be asking for. It's not something unreasonable. We're saying that the person who's going to lead a group of 300 prosecutors that serve the Queens residents should have done the job at some point during their career. At some point during their career, they should have been a prosecutor.
Well, so far people are saying that she never defended anyone as an attorney. She never prosecuted anyone.
She had no law enforcement
experience. She had no experience.
No.
So, and there is also another public views. Former Congressman Joe Crowley cut a deal with Richard Brown that he is going to support Melinda Kurtz for Queens DA.
Correct.
So Melinda Kurtz is gonna move from borough president to Queens DA. On the other hand, Joe Crowley is going to put his cousin Elizabeth Crowley to get Queens Borough President position. Are you aware of it, that this conversation is going outside?
I was not aware of that, but that's inside politics. That's the backroom politics that I mentioned before, where people, not the public, not the citizens of Queens County, but other people, power players in politics, gets to decide who represents Queens County as borough president, who represents Queens County as district attorney, and it's not democracy. It's anything but democracy.
Okay.
What it is, it's basically a very closed system that's protected, that has its own self-interest, and is not always looking out for what's in the best interest of Queens residents. Now, this is a perfect example. The Queens County Democratic Party has backed Melinda Kurtz, an individual who has absolutely no law enforcement experience whatsoever and has never prosecuted a case, never investigated a case. How does that happen? Of all the residents in Queens, of all the prosecutors in the DA's office, of all the lawyers that have been prosecutors in Queens, that work in Queens and live in Queens, why would they choose the one individual that has
no experience, absolutely no experience?
Because it's politics as usual. It's politics as usual that takes away the choice of the voter and presents them with an option that they can't say no to.
Okay.
Because they have no other opportunities. Now in this race, That's why in this race it's so important to know what the candidates stand for. It's so important to know who the candidates are. You know, I come to this office as an 18-year prosecutor with 18 years experience prosecuting and investigating crime, as a combat veteran, as a community leader. I'm not just an individual that goes to work and comes back home and doesn't do anything for my community. I serve my community as a director of a youth guild, as a PTA president of my children's school, as the flag football coach of the local football league in my community. So I serve. For me, it's about service. For me, it's about giving back to the community, serving the community, and doing the right thing.
Okay. And there is another individual is running, whose name is City Council member Rory Lanchman.
He has not investigated, prosecuted, defended in any way, shape, or form any individual or represented people of the state of New York in a criminal capacity. He is an attorney. He has practiced in civil matters, but he has no criminal experience. And this is what I'm talking about. You know, the people need to understand that in order for this person to do the job, they have to have the experience to know how to work in the system. They have to know how to experience to lead other prosecutors and tell them, because when someone dies in a public park and an officer gets killed trying to stop a robbery of a store, it's not the lower assistant district attorneys that make the decision. It's the district attorney
himself has to make the decision.
He or she has to make the decision of what charges are brought, whether the person is going to be remanded, whether the person is going to be indicted, and how they're going to be indicted, what witnesses, what evidence to use at trial. And if that person has never done it before,
how he's going to do it?
And that's why I tell all voters, I say, if God forbid, if you were a victim of a crime, or if your family was a victim of a crime, who would you want to prosecute that case? The individual who has no experience? Or the individual who's been doing it for 18 years? Because that's what you have to ask yourself. Don't let them fool you and say, oh, well, the DA doesn't really have to prosecute.
Got it.
No, it does. The DA makes decisions on big cases that the public want to know, you know, what's going on with those cases, how is justice being done in our court system, and it's the responsibility of the DA's office to make those decisions.
There is also another candidate, Judge Lyson.
The voters of Queens has to ask themselves, if they want change, who's going to give them the change? Is it a person that's been part of the DA's office for over 2 decades, has been a pro-prosecutor judge for another decade or so? You know, is that the person that's going to change the system? And I tell them, no, it's not. It's the person who comes in who doesn't owe the Democratic Party anything, who doesn't owe favors here and have personal relationships with judges and stuff like that. Things like that, you have to be independent as the district attorney, and you have to be able to come into the job and be able to say, this is what's going to change. and it's going to change because never accept the argument, we've always done this before and we should continue to do it. Nonsense. Don't, because you've done it before doesn't make it right. This is how it's going to change, and it takes somebody who has experience to say that, because the individuals on the other side of that discussion have 15, 20, 10 years experience as prosecutors, and they're looking at you and saying, you know, have you done this? We're telling you this is not possible. Have you done this? And if you can look at them in the eye and say, I have. I've done this, and I know what the law requires, and I know how we can change it and make it better. That's respect. That, from their perspective, is an understanding of, at least he knows what we do. At least that Jose Nieves knows. He's done the job. He knows what it entails. He knows what type of responsibility we have. He's looked into the eyes of victims. He's seen, he's made arguments to try to put people away because they've caused the death of others in the streets of the city. So, you know, it takes that type of experience and that type of commitment to change. I don't believe Judge Lasek has that commitment because he's just been part of the system for too long. Too long, yes. He has grown up. He is, as a district attorney, as a lawyer, his entire career has been in the DA's office in Queens. I've prosecuted in the federal system, in the military, and as a special assistant U.S. attorney. I've prosecuted cases as a district attorney, assistant district attorney in Brooklyn. I've prosecuted cases as a deputy chief with the New York State Attorney General's office. I practice in local, state, and federal jurisdictions. I have a varied perspective of the criminal justice system. I've seen what works, and I've seen how to make things better, and I've seen how to move in a way and change things in a way that creates real effect, that creates real fairness in the criminal justice system. If you've only known your entire career Queens District Attorney's Office, then that's all you know. If that's all your experience has been, that's all you know. How do you change something if you don't have that diversity of background, diversity experience?
Mr. Nieves, we are end of our time, and I have the last question. Now, the citizen of Queens County ended up with a guy as the district attorney. He just, neither he's dying nor he's alive, or he's half alive or half dead, but he's still running. Do you think, is it very fair to say there should be a term limit for district attorney too?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they should be term limits for district attorney. You should have somebody, a new district attorney, every 3 terms, every 12 years. It's a long time. This is not like 4 years.
No, it's not.
You got a 4-year term. You have 3 4-year terms. That's 12 years.
12
That's
years.
A decade. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think that's enough time for somebody to go into the office, make the changes that they want to see made, and then leave. And then let somebody else look at the system, fresh eyes, fresh ideas, fresh views, and see, well, what are we doing here? Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing justice every day? Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And are we doing it the best way we know how? And I think that even if there are not term limits, I'm going to impose term limits on myself. I'm not going to be the district attorney of Queens for 28 years. I will step aside after 3, at the very most 4 terms. But I think after 3 terms, I'll step aside and let the next generation, let the next generation take a shot at doing justice in Queens County.
There is also a serious allegation against Richard Brown. They're saying that for the last 28 years, he did not allow anybody to run against him on a Democratic ticket. He find anything and everything. He used his position to find technicalities so that that candidacy got cancelled. He couldn't run or she couldn't run. Did you hear this type of allegation before?
You know, I think it's politics as usual. I think, these allegations and anything like that is the Democratic Party in Queens making sure that people don't have a choice, making sure that whoever they pick as the representative, whether it be the borough president, whether it be the district attorney, that's who they have, the voters have to choose, and that's it. No choice. This is who your district attorney is. Accept it. And this is a different race. The voters have an opportunity to make a decision and make a choice of who's the best qualified for the job. And they can do that by picking somebody who has the right experience, who's going to change the system, who's an individual who's a career prosecutor, a combat veteran, and a community leader. That's the choice that I give them, and that's hopefully the choice that they make.
Why you think that you are the best candidate for Queens DA, and why neither Melinda Kurtz nor Judge Lesak or nor City Council member Rory Lanchman is the best candidate when you are there?
I'm the best candidate for Queens County District Attorney's Office because I have the life experience to change the criminal justice system and the professional experience to make sure those changes happen. I'm Jose Nieves. I'm running for Queens County District Attorney's Office. Why am I running? Because I want to see the system change from the ground up. And I want to make sure that we don't go do business as usual at the DA's office. I want to make sure that not only do we protect our families and we protect the citizens of Queens, but we also have a criminal justice system that we can be proud of. A criminal justice system that is fair, just, and equal for all. And I think that if you vote for me and if you elect me as your next district attorney, you will have that. The other candidates don't have the experience. I bring 18 years as a career prosecutor to the table. I am a combat veteran. I was a military prosecutor in the Army, and I'm also a community leader. I'm in the community, serving the community as we speak. And I think that that's important. The other candidates in this race don't have the varied experience that I have. They don't bring the life experience that I bring, and they don't, and they're not committed to doing the change. Borough President Katz is not going to change the office as I'm going to change the office. I'm going to bring the real changes. And it's all due respect to all the other candidates. I think they're decent people. I think they've served the Queens community in their own capacities respectfully and honorably. But for this position, for the district attorney for Queens County, it's a professional office that we need a professional prosecutor at the helm. And we need a leader that has done the job. A leader that can command respect, not only of every other prosecutor in the office, but of the court and of the defense counsel. A leader that's going to change the system so that it's fair, so that it's equal for everyone. A leader that's going to hold the system accountable when police officers cause the death or police officers abuse their authority and they engage in excessive force. A leader that will reach out to the community as a partner, and that you will know me as a district attorney, not because I'm a name on a book, but because I'm in your community. I will be in your community. I will sit across from the table with community leaders and find out what's important, what are the concerns of the community, and work in partnership with the community. That's what I bring to the table. That's what I bring as an assistant, as the district attorney of Queens County. And that's what I've always done as a prosecutor. And that's how you know that I will always do that as your district attorney. And that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Mr. Nieves, it is a pleasure and wonderful having you on my show.
Thank you.
And in the future, I'd like to bring Queens District Attorney Jose Nieves to my show. Can you promise that if you get elected, you're going to come back?
I'm going to come back here. I'm going to come back. You'll see me in the community. You won't have to even have a show because you'll see me in the community every day.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you very much, sir. Audience, this is one of the important interview, and this is one of the important election of our lifetime, especially for the residents of Queens County. Exactly what we are looking at a person who is qualified as a district attorney. A guy, first of all, he should be living in the county of Queens, not in Westchester, not in New York City or somewhere else. And we need someone who has proper experience, right mind, principle, moral, and care about people. Very most important, right experience. That's what Mr. Nieves was keep talking. What he was talking about, right experience. Right experience in what? Prosecuting, defending, look at the people's welfare, look at the people's getting fair justice. That's what we are looking at the district attorney's office. In the past, residents of Queens County were not lucky enough that they were having all those things from Richard Brown. They were fed up with the Queens DA's office. Some of the people has no idea who Richard Brown is. Neither he was living in Queens County, nor he cares about the residents of Queens County. Ladies and gentlemen, That's our show tonight. I'll see you next time. Take care.